Well, hello and welcome to Picture Book Chat. My name is Mary Ellen Brax and I work for the Spokane County Library District. I am the Public Services Manager for Early Learning. And so I'm here today with Sheri Boggs, who is our collection development person who buys all the great books for children birth to 18 years old. And we're here to talk about some books that we've picked out, some new books that have come in this year. I know we have less of a chance to see new books, so we thought we'd love to share them with you. And so Sheri's going to begin by talking about the book, and then I will add my comments in later. So Sheri, thank you for doing this with me.
Always, Mel. These are always so much fun. So like Mel said, this is something that we've kind of devised as a way to share a behind the scenes look at some of the things that we order and how we would look at using them like in Storytime or in the home. Because some of the best picture books, like it's more than just the story. There are all these things you can do related to, like science concepts or social emotional development. So especially social emotional development. I love the first book that I want to talk about, which is in my Annas Emotic. And there's a pronunciation guide in the back for this book, which is good because there's a lot of Inuit words that can be unfamiliar for us to say. As a buyer, I was really excited about this book for a number of reasons. I am always looking for Native American or First Nations titles for our collection. It's really important if they're actually written by people from that culture, which this is. The author of this book lives in Nunavut, which is way the heck up there. And so this book is influenced by that culture. I really love the strong graphics and all the close-ups of the babies. There's lots of close-ups of the baby's face and hands. There's lots of nature imagery. The Amautik is, when you look at a parka, I would think of it as the hood, but throughout the book, they talk about it being the place on a woman's parka where you carry the baby. And so I think we're used to baby carrying in the front. Here it's in the back. And there's a lot of language in this book about how safe that feels and how soft. There's lots of sensory words about the smells, like how the soft lining of the Amautik smells like early spring. There's sound words about like babbling brooks. It's just such a lovely book. Mel, what did you think of this one?
I love this book. I thought it was just a sweet, gentle story. And the whole book gives you that cozy feeling, which is great for this time of year. It's also a view into another world, which I always appreciate in a book in general, for myself, but I really like that for kids too, because it just kind of opens up their horizons. I really like how it kind of played to the senses too, because they talk about warm and cozy and soft, and you can do a lot for an activity. You can do a lot with what feels soft and cozy and fuzzy, and kind of play into that with a sensory lesson plan there. I also love the vocabulary in this. There's some great, like, listening stream trickling by. Protection was another one. Scent, swaddle. Those are great words that you can talk about with kids. Peaceful. And that's what I kind of felt about the whole book. It had a very peaceful, I thought it would be a good book it gave you a very peaceful feeling reading it. I could just feel my blood pressure lower, and it was just relaxing. And I thought it would be a great book to read before bedtime too, because you get into that cozy feeling. I did also like the glossary, and they also mention a website there to go for the pronunciation. So I really like the website too. So I would highly recommend taking advantage of that too. In terms of other activities, they talk about the igloo, and I thought, it's wintertime. You could do a whole science theme around an igloo and try to build your own, either indoors or outdoors. I feel like this kind of really works with preschoolers very well, and you could use it with older elementary too. you could also talk about the seasons and some of the things that you do, because you kind of see some seasonal changes in through there. So you could also just do, going back to the sensory theme, is pulling out different objects and talking about how they feel and the different textures. So it doesn't all have to be cozy and soft feeling things, but you could extend that and talk about all different types of objects. And then you could end with, well, when do you feel like cozy, like she does? You know, when do you feel nice and cozy and snuggly? And that would be a nice conversation to have, to build some vocabulary with your littles too. So I just thought it was just such a nice, peaceful, gentle read. So it really appealed to me personally, just too. It would have been a book I would have picked out for my kiddos to read before bedtime, definitely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Those are good ideas, Mel.
Thank you.
So this one's a little, it's similar, but I won't give away how it's similar. This next one, it's kind of a twist at the end. And that's Some Dinosaurs Are Small. This is your basic dinosaur book. It almost works on a nonfiction level. It's fiction, but it's got, you know, facts about dinosaurs.
Yeah.
And how some are small. And then they talk about their teeth. They have tiny flat teeth for munching.
Yes.
And then some dinosaurs are big. You can see the big legs there. So it talks about the differences in dinosaurs, and it just seems really kind of straightforward, but then it does some really funny things about how, you know, some dinosaurs are fast and you see the big dinosaurs chasing with the little dinosaur. And they're always thinking about their next meal. And to somebody reading this aloud in story time, or a parent, you might start to worry about where this narrative is going. Yeah. But I thought the book handled it really clever, because I was starting to think, oh no, you know, here they are running like the wind. And then they take food from little dinosaurs. Yeah. So you see, like, they've grabbed the little picnic lunch that the little dinosaur was gathering. So I thought that was a clever way to handle, you know, kind of the predatory nature. Yeah.
Rather than eating them, you know.
Exactly. And then the twist at the end is, you know, some dinosaurs are even bigger than these big dinosaurs. Yeah. Turns out it's the parent of like the little dinosaur. So I just thought this was really a fun introductory book to dinosaurs. Preschoolers love dinosaurs. I'm curious what you thought, Mel, and if this would even work for toddlers.
See, I thought it would work for toddlers. Okay. Yeah. Because, you know, there's a lot of books out there that you can read at different levels and get different things out of them. And this I thought was one of them. So you could read it to the toddlers. They're going to be fascinated by the dinosaur pictures. But then the preschoolers who know a little bit more about dinosaurs, because, you know, some preschoolers are like an encyclopedia about dinosaurs. And they'll tell you exactly, well, they eat this. They don't really take the food away from dinosaurs. That would be the one caveat I would say, you know, in story time, you're going to have that preschooler that says, in real life, they would really eat that dinosaur. And you can say, yeah, you know, you're right. That is. So, you know, and then you could talk about those differences. I really like the comparison with some dinosaurs are small and some are big, because, you know, those are beginning math words too. So you could do a lot of, you know, if you had your own set of plastic dinosaurs that you could divide out, you know, by size, talk about the different sizes, talk about the different colors. So you can be working on sorting skills too. So that's kind of what I was reading into that, you know, what do dinosaurs really eat? So you can turn it into a whole science lesson, and talk in the, you know, different kinds of dinosaurs, and bring in other books to support this, because of course we have a wealth of dinosaur books, but I just really like this. And I really liked how he goes to his mom at the end. And yeah, and then she's, you know, giant, you know. So yeah, this was a really fun one. And I can definitely see using this in story time, and it would have big appeal to it. So some dinosaurs are small. So, and I just love that the T-Rex is, hovering over there over the little guy too. But, you brought up, the social emotional and taking away lunches too. I mean, you could talk about even bullying with this. And so this would be kind of a gentler way to bring up bullying. Was that really a nice thing to do? And you could have a discussion, that social emotional little tidbit behind that's kind of snuck in there, I thought, that you could really discuss. So that caught my eye. I didn't really even zero in on that until you mentioned it. So this is why I love talking about books with you, Sheri. We all see different things.
Yeah, I never even thought of that, but you're right. And I think for some kids, it can be threatening to have the bullying conversation when you're talking about, human characters. It's a little too close to home, but I think, when it's dinosaurs, it's a way to kind of soften it and make it abstract enough to make it easy enough to talk about.
Yeah, how do you think they feel? You could, so that you could start talking and using, words there that can help them to describe their feelings too. A lot of times that's really hard for kids to put into words. How are they really feeling about the whole situation? So, so that was a little tidbit I wasn't expecting in this book. So.
Again, like books with layers. I love it.
Definitely. So a fun one. I was glad to see a new dinosaur book.
Yeah, me too. So my next one is about people, and it's Intersection Allies. And the very first thing that attracted me to this book were the colors. I just love these vibrant, kind of warm tones, the bright pops of green and orange and pink.
Yeah.
So that alone I thought was great. But then, of course, the theme of intersectionality. And intersectionality is something that you see people talking about a lot, but it can be hard to maybe describe it and explain it to kids. And it's that concept of we're never just one thing. Like if you have a disability, you're not just a disabled person. Like you're a person that has a disability, but also loves science fiction and, is vegan or whatever, like you're an intersection of all these different things that you can be. And so this book talks about that. And I love this thing, we make room for all. And so this book is all about, remembering to look around and see who's being left out, who needs to be included. And like it's, as they say in the introduction, it's not just about kindness or tolerance. It's like an active way to make sure that people are part of the conversation, they're part of the circle, they're part of the group. And there was something about this first picture that, I love how this is illustrated. Like got this group of people together and everybody's different, but they have all these similarities. Like they talk about, age is one thing that they have in common, maybe gender, but then also everybody has a different and unique personality. And so this book talks about that. Mel, how would you use this? Like, would you use this in a story time, or is it more of a one-on-one book?
I would think it's more of a one-on-one book, or maybe for older kids in a classroom setting where you could talk about this. I think you'd really need to do some groundwork beforehand about talking about differences. But what I really did love about this book too is there's a letter for the grown-ups at the very beginning of the book. And I also love that at the end, there's a discussion guide for each page, which, let's learn together, they call it, a page-by-page discussion guide here. So I found that extremely helpful. And I also like that they really talk about what is intersectionality too. So I thought they had some great questions in here and things that I wouldn't have necessarily have thought to talk about. So I really, and I really appreciated that, I think. And I really appreciated how each page was something different too, so that you wouldn't have to read the book in its entirety. Or I think really what I would do is read the book in its entirety, because there's a rhyming text to it. It has a really nice flow to it. I love the refrain: when there's room for some, we make room for all. Friends can be allies, no matter how small. And that just really sat well with me. I mean, that would be something I, want to, I think it would catch kids' attention too, and other adults too. So, yeah, I think this is a great one for one-on-one discussion too. And I love that at the back of the book, they talked about each one of the authors or contributors to the book too. So I thought that was a nice little perk to that too, because sometimes that's not what you get. I also really appreciated that they had their book list set up in book form.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
Yeah, so, inspired by, and what books they were inspired by. So, I looked at this list and went, wow, now I have like a whole nother page to my want to read list. So it has a lot of appeal for adults too. I mean, I can even see using this with middle schoolers, really.
Yeah.
So I think it spans a lot of age ranges, and just the illustrations are so beautiful in this that, it's one I feel like I need to sit with for a while too, to really think about, could you really use it in story time? I think it might be a little bit too long for story time.
Yeah.
But maybe a kindergarten classroom, first grade classroom. So I think it could fall into a couple of different social studies curriculums or civic curriculums too. So, yeah, what a project that they came up with. I was very impressed with this, with how they dealt with all the topics that they brought up, and just how they made it seem like, well, of course we do this. There's room for all. And I really like that part about it, but then it talks about the why behind it. And there's a little bit of history snuck in here too, which I really liked, in addition to that. So yeah, I love that they say that, the book discussion guide at the end to learn together. And I think that's another thing we need to talk with kids about too, that adults, you're always learning, and you can learn with other people. So there were a whole bunch of little tidbits in here I just loved, that I just really thought were fantastic.
Yeah, like this is another one that kind of reveals itself to you the longer you sit with it.
Yes, definitely.
Like notice, because I've looked at it a number of times, and just now while you were talking, I was looking at a page where they talk about what you wear is no reason for hatred. And that can be another thing to talk about how you express yourself, or the things that you put on that are a part of your culture or your background. Like those are the things that might make you different and special, but they're also things that can be celebrated and appreciated. And it's everybody from different cultures has different ways of dressing and expressing themselves. So I am not articulating that well. The book does a much better job.
Yeah. Well, I kind of felt that way too when I'm trying to describe it. I feel like the book does a much better job. And it's interesting you bring up, the differences in dressing and stuff. And I even think back to when I was a child and being in the military, and we lived all over the world and all over the country, and just how different things were back when I was a child, because that was 50 years ago, right? And now we have much more of a similar look,
right?
And I really like the celebrating the differences, and that it's okay to be that way, because that's what makes people unique. And we've lost a little bit of that, because with the internet and just being able to see everything and everybody, I mean, we've gained some things too. So as usual, we have to take the pros with the cons, but how do you address that with children, that, you know, it's really okay to be different.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, and to point out not only the differences, but the similarities too. So I think the book did a really nice job of doing that too. So,
Yeah, definitely. There were
mhm.
not books like this when we were both young.
No, there were not. And it really would have helped in a lot of instances, I think. So when I was younger. Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Same.
Yes.
Well, my last book, it's funny, the more I've been thinking about it as we've been doing this chat, it kind of pulls in themes from all of the 3 books that we've talked about, even though they're very different. And that is You Matter by Christian
Yes.
Robinson. Christian
Mm-hmm.
Robinson is one of my favorite illustrators. I believe he's the illustrator of School's First Day of School, which I love. I think he also illustrated Antoinette, which is one of my favorite picture books.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
About a French bulldog family and a poodle family that find out they have some things in common. So
and
you
The Last Stop on Market Street, which
yes, yeah,
yes.
so
And,
good.
yes.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite illustrators of probably the last decade. So this starts out with a girl looking into the microscope and looking at the things that are too small to see, those that go with the tide and those that don't. So you're kind of seeing some sciencey themes, some nature themes, the first to go and the last, some evolution. And I loved this page because this kind of brings us back to our dinosaur book. When everyone thinks you're a pest, there's a little mosquito and it's on the tail of something, which turns out to be this T-Rex.
Yeah.
Something is just out of reach. And the whole refrain of this book is, you know, no matter who you are or how small you are or where you come from, you matter. And what I loved about this book were the different perspectives. Like the mosquito's a pest, but the T-Rex has his own troubles because he can't reach. Like he can't get back there and spot it. He can barely even turn around to see what's going on. So I love that kind of twist of, you know, we all kind of have our crosses to bear, or, you know, our difficulties, or, you know, things that make us feel like maybe, you know, we don't fit in or we don't matter. I just feel like there are books that talk about that, but I love that this one kind of takes, you know, a sciencey kind of, what's the word? I just had it. Never mind. You know, it takes this evolutionary approach to it, which I've never really seen in a book that kind of talks about, you know, you are special or you matter. So I thought this one was really unique, and I loved kind of the white space around everything. I feel like this would be a good one to use even with kids that are learning to read for themselves. Like the text, like it looks little here, but it's big enough. It's probably like maybe a 14 or 16 point type. And with all that white space, it's easy to kind of see the letters and the words. So I feel like this could be used across various ages, but I'm interested to hear what you think, Mel, and if you think that.
Yeah, actually, I do think that because you can read it on the very basic level. There's enough. There's not too much text on the page that you can start with this at a toddler age. I think, and I just love the message of the book, that you matter. It's very empowering, I think. But then you also get into some of the social emotional about feelings. So, you know, some say goodbye. Sometimes someone you love says goodbye, or sometimes you feel lost and alone, but you matter. So there's a lot of social emotional type things in here that would be great to talk about with kids. And there's a lot of opposites too. So first to go and the last in there, old and young. And I felt that way it kind of really lined up too with the dinosaur book, because you could talk about, you know, small and big and do the opposites too. Some great vocabulary when somebody thinks you're a pest, and kind of, and then they show a picture of the pest too with the mosquito. So you've got that dual meaning in there and what does it actually mean. So I think you could really really use this in a couple of different ways. So like you said, kind of the scientific background, and you've got those science concepts in there with some opposites and big or tall, near or far, first or last, but then you've got the social emotional piece in there, and you've got the multicultural aspect of the book, especially with the front of the book there.
Mhm.
See if I can glare off of it, but yeah, and even just talking about what matters to you, what's important to you, is sometimes a question we don't always ask kids. You know, why does that matter to you? When you see a child getting really uptight about something, you can say, why does that matter to you? Let's talk this through. And still putting across the point that they matter themselves.
Mhm.
So, I mean, there's two different things going on here. That the fact that you just matter in general, no matter what, but then that their feelings matter too. So that I think that differentiation can be important to a child too. Because if you say an object or an action doesn't matter, it doesn't mean that you don't matter. You still matter. And I think we have to be careful when we talk to kids, that I think it's very easy for them to get the idea that they don't matter. Then if you don't value my opinion, then obviously you don't think I matter. So I think that would be great to kind of build on that you can have a discussion and you can have a disagreement, but that doesn't mean that people shouldn't matter to each other. They should, and that you matter if we have a disagreement, type of thing. So I don't know, what do you think about that? Because that was just something I was just working on as we were talking too, and which is what we do when we talk about books like this. We oftentimes suddenly have that little aha moment. Well, maybe we could go in this direction.
I had that happen as you were talking, like we do. Like I was looking at the cover, and I love that they use the parachute game on the cover, because it also, what this says to me also is teamwork. Like you matter. Like to make the parachute game work, like you need everybody around it, you know, holding onto their corner.
And then when
everybody gets their turn.
The book fully, so you see the whole parachute.
Yeah, so fun.
Yeah.
So another one with layers. I just love it.
Did you notice?
Yeah.
At the beginning? So where is they're with the parachute in the middle of the city in the park. So I like looking at the M papers. We did a book study in our early learning team from Eric Carle Museum, and they talk about the artwork and how that really ties in and stuff. And I feel like this, when you talk about those layers, this has a lot of layers, especially when you start looking at the cover and the end papers, and and then you see the road going out of town. So yeah, no, you're right, lots of layers in there. So yeah, I mean, the way these books tied together when we first started working on them, I'm like, ooh, do these tie together? But
like I felt like it was pretty random when we started. I was kind of looking at them like, I don't know about this group, but as we've been talking, it's like they really work together.
Yeah. So there, you got a little insight into how our minds work as we take a look at these books. And you know, when we're actually in the libraries, I can get up from my cubicle and walk into her office and say, hey, what do you think about this? Or she comes out and says to me, what do you think? Is this really a picture book that goes in the picture book collection, or do we put it in the older kids collection? So
or nonfiction.
Yeah. And so just one of the very fun aspects of our jobs that we do. So I mean, Sheri deals with all the books all the time. I deal more on the programming side, but it's nice when our worlds collide because we definitely depend on each other for what we do and how
Yeah.
we're picking things out and how we use things. So in fact, when you're using these books with the kiddos, you may see something else in here that we haven't seen. So yeah, shoot us a little email or a comment too if you saw something else in there that you could share with us about what you liked or even what you didn't like, because you don't have to like all the books. It's something that, you know, not every book is for every person. So
So true.
I think that's something we need to remember when we're reading to kids too. If a book isn't working, it's okay to close the book and come back to it another time. And another time, it may be a totally different experience reading that book too. So,
yeah, that's really true. Sometimes as a buyer, I'll order something, based on a review, or a recommendation from somebody. And when we get it in, I kind of don't see what they saw about it. And sometimes I'll think, wow, that was kind of a dud, but I'll come back to it later, or a staff person will say, I used this in Storytime and this is what we did with it and it was amazing, and I'll see it in a completely different light. So there can be like a subjectivity to this that's kind of funny, like the book doesn't change like you do, or your perception of it changes. Yeah, picture books are fantastic. I love them.
Yes. And you can read the same book to two different groups and have totally different reactions.
Oh yeah. Anybody that's done story time has seen that happen.
Yeah. So yeah, just because it may not work in your classroom one particular year doesn't mean it won't work in your classroom another particular year. You just never know what's going to resonate with the kids in your classroom or the kids in your story time. So yes. So, well, thank you, Sheri. This has been awesome again.
I know, so much fun. Thanks, Mel. Yeah, I love that we're doing this. And again, to our people watching, if you've got any thoughts on these books or some books that you'd like to see us do, we tend to focus on the newer releases, but we're always open to feedback and would like to know what you think. So let us know.
Great. Well, I think with that, we are going to close for today, but thanks so much for joining us, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.